Good evening. Thanks for joining us here on your evening on Spectrum News 1. I'm Karen Edwards.
I'm going to wait to hear her say antibodies
bigger stories
again.
there at the top of the hour, weather on the ones. Now let's take a look at our top story here this evening.
Here's your Spectrum News in 90. The rally for excluded workers has made its way to the state capitol. The group's been marching from New York City to Albany, calling for more funding for excluded workers to be included in the state budget. They also want funding for a permanent program similar to unemployment, along with health insurance for those workers.
For the third time this year, a Poughkeepsie student is arrested in connection to threats on social media. The latest, a 15-year-old girl is facing 4 counts of making a terroristic threat. Both middle and high schools will return to in-person classes on Thursday.
The Poughkeepsie Common Council approving a new 10-year sales tax agreement with Dutchess County. The agreement would provide a $3 million payment to the city, as well as increase Poughkeepsie's share of sales tax revenue over a decade. The agreement now heads to the Dutchess County Legislature for a vote.
Now let's get a check of your weather on the ones.
What's up, everyone? I'm Spectrum News meteorologist Ryan Finn. Rain pushing in here this evening, and for some across the Catskills and Sullivan County, this is going to come down as a mix tonight and into tomorrow morning. Freezing rain a possibility as well, so untreated surfaces later tonight and into tomorrow morning could become icy. Around the Hudson Valley, though, tonight, we stay warm enough for just rain. Going to have rain around here for tomorrow morning. It will taper somewhat heading into the afternoon.
America has lost a history-making political icon. Madeleine Albright, the first woman to serve as U.S. Secretary of State, has died. Her family confirming Albright died from cancer earlier this afternoon. She died surrounded by family and friends. Albright received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012, and she recently spoke at fellow Secretary of State Colin Powell's funeral last November. Albright was 84 years old.
Supreme Court judicial nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson facing a second day of questioning. Several Republican lawmakers try to paint Jackson as soft on crime and
No
raise
word
issues
of the
from the
burgeoning
nation's
nuclear
culture wars.
war.
If confirmed, Jackson would be the first black woman on the nation's
After all,
highest
Madeleine
court.
Albright
Julia
gave us,
Benbrook
was
of
part of the
Spectrum
team
News
that gave
Washington
us the
Bureau
war in
breaks
Iraq,
down the
right?
hearing and whether it will affect Jackson's confirmation.
The Senate Judiciary Committee questioned Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson
She there
for
with her
2
twin
days,
sister?
while Democrats repeatedly praised her.
And you will become a member of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Republicans were far more pointed, asking about sentences she issued in child pornography cases.
If you're on the internet trolling for images of children and sexual exploitation, so you don't think that's a bad thing? I think that's a horrible thing.
That's not what the witness said.
Transgender issues.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
Expanding the Supreme Court.
I understand why it is that the canons of judicial ethics don't allow you to comment on matters that might come before you. This is one that could not come before you as a justice.
Even children's books about race used in the private school where Jackson is a board member.
Senator, I have not reviewed any of those books, any of those ideas. They don't come up in my work as a judge.
The questioning reflected a shift in Supreme Court confirmations over the years. They have become increasingly partisan and combative. Several of the Republicans sought to portray Jackson as soft on crime and far from the mainstream. A former Democratic staffer for the committee says it's an effort to appeal to Republican voters and tarnish Democrats.
I think, I realize several of these senators are running for president. They're engaging in a kind of a performance politics.
There is a general consensus that nothing came up in the hearing to derail Jackson's confirmation. Democrats have the votes to put her on the court.
It's grace under pressure. She has an incredible demeanor, even in the face of constant interruptions.
Jackson did make a bit of news Wednesday, saying she would recuse herself from an affirmative action case involving Harvard College because she serves on a board there. The full Senate is expected to vote on her nomination in April. In Washington,
Ask her
Julia
about
Benbrook,
the head of the
Spectrum
biology
News.
department at Harvard. Oh yeah, there's that other thing about nuclear war.
The U.S. officially declaring Russian troops have committed war crimes in Ukraine.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. has received reports of attacks deliberately targeting civilians, as well as other atrocities. Russian forces have destroyed apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, and more, leaving thousands of people killed or injured.
Blinken's statement coming while traveling to Europe with President Joe Biden. Biden will attend an emergency summit in Brussels Thursday.
Archela Popolars is there.
President
He breaks
Joe
down
Biden,
what we can expect from
President
new
Joe
sanctions to
Biden.
NATO troop deployments.
President Joe Biden will join the leaders of 29 other NATO countries for what's being billed as an extraordinary summit at the alliance's headquarters in Brussels. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will address the meeting virtually as NATO leaders discuss short and long-term responses to Russia's war.
We face a new reality for our security. So we must reset our deterrence and defense for the longer term.
Biden left the White House Wednesday warning that Russia could engage in chemical warfare.
I think it's a real threat.
His national security advisor said the goal of this trip is for Biden to show the world that the United States and its allies stand together in supporting Ukraine.
The president is traveling to Europe to ensure we stay united, to cement our collective resolve.
Biden will also meet with G7 leaders at NATO headquarters, which is about 3 miles from where I'm standing. He will then come here to the Europa building in downtown Brussels to address the European Council. Russia invaded Ukraine 1 month ago Thursday. It's launched more than 1,000 missiles since then, many hitting schools, shopping malls, apartment buildings, and even a hospital. Over 3.5 million Ukrainians have fled the country as President Zelensky begs for more weapons and support. Biden and the other Western leaders will discuss how much more help they can provide to Ukraine without triggering a war between Russia and NATO.
We are determined to do all we can to support Ukraine. But we have a responsibility to ensure that the war does not escalate beyond Ukraine.
Biden will also travel to Poland on Friday, where he's expected to meet with U.S. troops and those responding to the refugee crisis. In Brussels, Taylor Popolars, Spectrum News.
So she says antibodies.
Taylor, thank you. Now, here at home, Governor Kathy Hochul announced the Ukrainian flag will be flown on the Capitol building, the Executive Mansion, and the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services headquarters Thursday, marking 1 month since the Russian invasion started. The governor also inviting local governments across the state to do the same on local municipal buildings. And remember, you can find all the latest developments on the war anytime by following along with our blog on our website, SpectrumLocalNews.com. The COVID-19 response team is asking Congress for more money to fight the pandemic. As the BA2 variant spreads across the world, the panel is reiterating a 4th vaccine dose is recommended for immunocompromised people. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra says funding from the American Rescue Plan has been depleted, forcing them to cancel purchases of vaccine doses and antibody treatments.
Our success in fighting COVID depends on our continued vigilance, our unwavering support for our scientists, our healthcare heroes, our essential workers, and our families navigating this COVID world.
Meanwhile, another new development, we've learned COVID-19 response coordinator Jeff Zients is leaving the Biden administration next month. No word yet on his possible replacement. The Kingston Police Department is working to diversify and reaching out to the community with a new program to do it. Spectrum News 1 reporter Ben Nandy has given us all the details about the program, including why it's happening now. That story and more when we return.